The primary virtue of single-sex schools is that they offer every student an opportunity to explore his or her gifts and leadership potential, sheltered to some extent from the pressure to perform for the opposite sex. Almost every school in the U.S. is co-ed, except for a few single-sex schools. Many people that hear single-sex schools typically speak poorly of them, asking people who attend them, why would you ever go to an all-girls or an all-boys school? In almost every instance, I've heard from people saying this. The people that they're usually asking respond by saying, it was one of the best decisions of my life going to an all-boys and all-girls school. In many instances, kids that go to same-sex schools get better grades than those kids that go to co-ed schools. Seeing as you do not have as many distractions in the classrooms, you tend to pay attention more often, which tends to higher grades. Also, boys and girls tend to learn differently, and sometimes while in a classroom together, debates tend to happen between opinions of the opposite sex. Lastly, the relationships you gain through going to a single-sex school are incredible. There is rarely any drama to tear people apart. Regardless of what you may have seen in TVs or movies, all-girls schools are not as dramatic as they are perceived. To be able to see my point of view, I'm going to review 3 reasons that same-sex schools are better than co-ed. First, you're more focused on your work and you get better grades. Second, boys and girls tend to learn differently and have different opinions. Third, you become closer with everyone in your grade and you tend to gain stronger relationships. According to research done at the University of Pennsylvania, girls attending girls' schools were significantly more likely to attend a 4-year college compared with girls attending co-ed schools. Likewise, boys who graduated from boys' schools were significantly more likely to attend a 4-year college compared with boys who graduated from co-ed schools. This statement helps to back up my argument with the fact that in a classroom of all boys or all girls, students are more likely to succeed in making the grades that they have the potential to make. Not only are grades and test scores seem to be relatively higher, but also you find that extracurricular involvement is also more prevalent. Written on samesexschools.org, it is stated that at boys' schools, it's common to find that the best football player and the best basketball, soccer player is also the top student. At co-ed schools, that is rare. Typically, students in single-sex schools are taught how to make good grades and also be involved in extracurriculars such as clubs, sports, and student government. Now that I've told you about how grades are affected by same-sex schooling, I'll talk about how girls and boys learn differently. Arguments happen in classrooms every day, causing verbal fights in classrooms and outbreaks of people's true emotions towards the subject they are talking about. Boys and girls tend to have different opinions about different subjects and typically do not see eye to eye. GreatSchools.org states in an article that a driving force in single-sex education movement in recent research shows natural differences in how males and females learn. Parents and educators are realizing the difference and realizing how different and how boys and girls learn are different from each other. Okay, sorry. The same website also states that single-sex education enhances student success when teachers use techniques geared toward the gender of their students. In single-sex schools, teachers can plan their lessons around the gender of the kids that they are teaching to be more effective than trying to teach boys and girls with techniques that could help one gender but not the other. WashingtonParent.com says, students feel the freedom to take classes usually associated with the opposite sex. For example, girls taking higher level math and boys taking chorus. An article written on hubpage.com states, it has to be good for girls to experience at least one community in which girls and women run the show and participate in all its functions. After spending in my high school in an all-girls schools, coming from a co-ed school, I can personally say the difference in teachers' approach of teaching subjects we learned was so much more effective in high school because they did not have to try to appeal to both boys and girls, but rather only girls. Now I will talk about how the relationships with people in your class become stronger in a same-sex school rather than a co-ed school. Relationships. We all want those friendships to last forever, and we all look to have a group to be a part of while going through our years in school. At single-sex schools, you have the opportunity to grow closer to all of your classmates, seeing as the classes are much smaller and more personal. A current teacher at an all-girls school in the Midwest writes on hubpage.com, girls form friendships that last a lifetime. This is a commonplace of single-sex education, but striking in the larger cultural context of a society that militates against close and lasting bonds. Although it seems like it is only girls that form strong friendships by going to schools with the same sex, boys are the same way. Not only do they improve their relationships with other boys, but also with girls. After a study done by Dr. Sachs, written on singlesexschools.org, states, boys in single-sex schools become more sensitive men. They're more polite. Both boys and girls grow in their relationships with their peers and strengthen their bonds with their classmates. Ooh, sorry. In conclusion, I believe that more parents should consider sending their children to single-sex schools. People need to stop listening to the stereotypes of single-sex schools and think about how their children's futures are affected by where they choose to enroll them in school. Single-sex schools are better for kids to go to school because they have many more opportunities to do what they want without being held back because of the opposite sex, and despite popular belief that kids that go to single-sex schools have just as much of social skills and friends of the opposite sex as those that go to co-ed schools.